seconds for the all-seeing guy.
Sure.
Oh, that came up pretty quick. Great. Good afternoon, everybody. What a great day for me here and What's in Disguise. Everyone knows that I've been looking up for a long time and a lot of things, and now I'm privileged today to have Stephen Bassett here with me, and it is an honor and a privilege. A gentleman that has spoken in 20 countries. He's known across the media platforms. He's done over 1,500 media interviews. You'll catch that clip at the beginning and at the end of the process of the show when it is all shared out totally. I want to thank you, Steve, for being here. You're really in the know on a lot of things. Give us some guidance. What's going on here? I mean, are we going to see maybe possibly really soon the Garden of Eden of this whole situation of the big D or the little d of disclosure?
Sure. I don't know about the Garden of Eden. I'm not thinking about that, but it's now 78 years since Roswell, since they put out a press release and said, we got a saucer. They didn't mention the bodies because they hadn't gotten to the second crash site yet. I always wonder if they'd gotten to the second crash site maybe quickly, and that Blanchard, the base commander, knew that they had not only a saucer, but they had some of the non-human pilots, right? If they'd have still put out that press release, I'm thinking probably not. I think they'd have probably gotten in touch with Ramey, maybe, and they would say, wait a minute, we got one of those saucers, but it turns out there's pilots in them, and they don't look like your cousin Fred. And so, but we'll never know. But they put out a press release. And at that point, the world was told, but it was 47. The United States government stepped back and said, let's think about this. And they're still thinking about it 78 years later. So, but early on, right at the beginning, there were people that figured, I mean, it's not complicated. You look at the reports that were coming in the 40s. You look at the Kevin Arnold case. Kevin Arnold? The Arnold case of the 9 basically flat discs. They were actually chevron-shaped craft, but nothing that we have flying. They were seen elsewhere, so forth. A lot of sightings. That it was pretty obvious to people, a lot of people, that time. Oh, we got something special here. But what could they do? Well, right away, some people started speaking up. One of the first ones was Don Lacchio. He was out there early on, and because he was a Marine pilot, an officer, and he got heard, and he got on media. He got interviewed. He started an organization to deal with this issue. So early on, there were people that were kind of coming together and going, wait a minute, there's something special happening here, and the government's not acknowledging it. So we're now 78 years into that public engagement of this phenomena and what it represents. At this point, the overall government, certainly the Defense Department's position is nothing there. There's really nothing you need to be concerned about.
Yeah, it's balloons.
Yeah, whatever. It is anything but extraterrestrial or non-human technology. But that's 77 years. But that policy, which I came to label the truth embargo back around 2000, 2001, and I renamed it that. I mean, I renamed it. I mean, I don't have any power, but because UFO cover-up was a bad name, it wasn't a cover-up. It was a legal national security policy. It was simply a classified policy, and it wasn't illegal, I can assure you. So UFO cover-up was not accurate, and it wasn't going to help the movement. So truth embargo is what it was, like they embargoed Cuba. Cuba is there, all right? It's legal for us to embargo Cuba over national security matters, which we did and still do, which is ridiculous. We should have ended that embargo a long time ago, but that's another story. And it's like that. So truth embargo. That truth embargo is now collapsing. And it's not just out of nowhere. The beginning of the collapse, the end of this policy, which is in its 78th year, started about 7 years ago. When a group of people came forward publicly who had worked at the Pentagon, at the CIA, and other significant agencies that are part of the national security structures, the military intelligence complex, and basically came forward and said, look, this information has got to get out and so forth. They put their name and their bio up on the website. That was October, I believe, 11 of 2017. 2 months later, those same people, with the aid of some journalists, put two major stories out into the New York Times involving not only Senator Reid's efforts to fund a program of the DoD, but also one of the known cases going all the way back to 2007, I believe. And the witnesses came forward on that. And those are the two New York Times articles, December 16, 17, which included, and this is not trivial, actual video clips that the DoD ultimately acknowledged were gun camera clips from our fighter planes picking up UAP, right? There's never been released by any government ever, because when they go up and film this stuff, high definition, also in night vision, maybe 30, 40 minutes, when those planes land, they pull that out of that plane and they stick it in a vault. It's not ever to see the light of day. They have God knows how many thousand gun camera events, clips, and so forth in their vaults. Never released any of them. These three were released. Does it matter whether they were in fact UAP or not? I think one of them might be, maybe two, but I think one of them is not. Doesn't matter. The point is that they had released gun camera clips, thus acknowledging, yeah, we got a lot of this footage. And that was up on the site, 2017, December 16. And those clips have been seen untold millions and millions of times. And so that really gets things rolling. December 16, 17, 2017. And right away, things started happening mostly behind the scenes. The Congress was being approached. Witnesses started being brought up on the Hill. There was an education process for those that needed it. They were targeting the right committees, the Armed Services and Intel Committee of the House and the Senate. They weren't targeting the entire 535 members. No, they were targeting the appropriate ones, briefing them, bringing witnesses in. And this kind of went on for 2 years while the media did its job. It's always covered this issue. But after those articles in the New York Times, the coverage exploded. In the last 7 years, I have archived on my print media archives almost 7,000 legitimate professional news articles. Print media archive at paradigmresearchgroup.org. It's under ongoing projects in those 7 years. The total amount of articles that I was able to link off of the net and save to my server, the most I could get, because it's, as you go back in time, they're not there, is 16,000. So in the last 7 years, almost 40% of all the articles I've been able to link are in just those 7 years. So the media is pounding the issue. And that is softening up the truth embargo, opening up the doors. And then in 2020.
A quick question here. Do you think, though, with all this happening, there is a weakening in the structure of this deep hidden agenda that goes on and stays suppressed, that it was stronger then than it is now? And there's a willingness for people, as you say, and an acceptance of us pushing all together now. This is the key factor.
Well, no, at the same time that the processes engaging directly the truth embargo are underway, the public's awareness is growing because, again, the media ignited with huge amounts of coverage. And very quickly, that coverage, almost all the stigma fell away. Within 2 years, all the stigma had fell away. The odd silly piece, the odd debunking piece would turn up. And I would put those up. But the professional journalists, right, legitimate entities, I'm triaging all this fluff and the small stuff off in the area, or even UAP only press, that kind of stuff, pounded away at the issue, educating the public very rapidly over the next 2 years. Okay, so we get to 2020, right, which is about 2 years and a month after the famous articles in the New York Times. And the first major development is that in July of 2020, the Senate Intel Committee, under the leadership of Republican Marco Rubio, he sponsored a small piece of legislation about UAP that was slipped into the $2 trillion COVID bill. So they weren't going to fight about it. It wasn't a big deal. But it was the first piece of legislation ever passed by the Congress engaging this issue. 2020, which was essentially 63 years after Roswell. And so that was a major breakthrough. That report, that piece of legislation called for a report the following year, 2021, and that report was supposed to come on June the 25th. I'm pretty sure that was it, or was it the second bill? Whatever. And so that started a process which went over the next 5 years, actually 4 years. We had 4 pieces of legislation, one after another, and each one was more robust than the other. The 4th piece of legislation, which was submitted in 2023 for the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. And let me point out that we're not just talking about some standalone favorite bill kind of thing, like they rename a post office. This legislation was to be in the National Defense Authorization Act, which is one of the most important pieces of legislation. So it's not some side gig. There's been efforts at that. They all failed. And so on the 4th piece of legislation included an omnibus package called the UAP Disclosure Act, which deliberately set up everything needed legislatively, as well as the necessary powers and subpoena powers and oversight and classifications needed for the Congress and the White House to orchestrate a process in which everything classified in our government regarding this phenomena, all docs, all programs, any technology developments or scientific learning, any ET bodies, everything would come out of the, quote, secret world, be reviewed, held back a little bit, or push forward into the archives and available across worldwide. That total package. That's how far we had gone as of July of 2023. This was a bridge too far. It even included eminent domain, so the government could take eminent domain over ET tech and ET bodies in private hands and corporate hands. And that was important because these corporations had plans to make a lot of money from that, and they didn't want to have any risk that the government could take it from them. Doesn't mean the government wouldn't let them make money. It just means that it would have control. These corporations, what we call defense contractors, really wanted to maintain control of that ET tech and everything they've learned from it forever. Well, that's capitalism, right? That's the word capitalism. The business of America is business. So it included even eminent domain. That was too far. So that bill was cut back in half. The basic bill was there. The basic structure was there. But all the powers to make it happen in a timely fashion were taken away. And that was 2023. In 2024, the original bill with the whole package was resubmitted for the 2025 NDAA, which means that the Senate Intel came back and said, well, yeah, you cut it in half, but we're going to get that. And here it is again. But this time in 2024, that bill was being submitted in the middle of an incredibly intense, complicated, ferocious political presidential campaign, the final year of the presidential campaign. And so it ultimately was withdrawn because it was blocked by one of the senators because it was an amendment and it was blockable. So there was no bill passed last year. Right. However, a couple of bills were submitted into the House. And so we had that. All right. In addition, in 2023, we had the first, in May 17th of 2022, again, in this 7-year ramp up from 2017, we had the first hearing since 1968, a relatively brief hearing in front of, I think, a subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee, in which the two gentlemen that were running the UAP task force, Mulder and Bray, were brought in to provide a report, answer some questions. Not a big deal. All right. And that was on May the 17th of 2022, the first hearing since 1968. And it didn't didn't create any huge uproar, but there were some very significant things that happened in that hearing. Then we had a couple of more hearings, and overall there have been either 8 or 9 hearings since May of 17 of 2022, when the last one had been in 1968. And so, but the major hearings were in front of the House Subcommittee on Oversight and Government Reform. They had the first, what we'll call substantive hearing, on July 26 of 2023. All right. Then they've had another one recently, last year, November 13th of 2024. There's been several briefings in the Senate. All right. Meanwhile, in these last 5 years, going back to 2022, there have been numerous classified reports given to certain committees and members of certain committees. Witnesses have come forward by the dozens, maybe the scores. They've come forward privately. They have been talking with staffers. Some have met with all behind the scenes, call it all prep, call it all getting together, getting organized. That's been it. So the learning curve of Congress just got even steeper. That's been going on for the last 3 years. The media coverage has expanded even more. And then, of course, some witnesses have gone full public. Now, there'd always been people from the government, from the military, stating this thing was real. All right. Yeah. Edgar Mitchell said these were ETs. Gordon Cooper said these were ETs. All right. Other pilots, Keogh said it, right, and so forth. But what started happening really in a formal way in 2023 is that a witness came forward from out of the government's program while working, or actually having just left the UAP task force. So this is real time. This is not dated at all. And that was David Grush. And he came forward on June 5 of 2023, which helped trigger the it helped trigger the July 26 hearing in the House, where he was the lead witness. But it triggered something else. So June 5, David Grush comes forward with extraordinary testimony, saying flat out, I have had it confirmed from top inside sources, which I have vetted, that we have the non-human bodies, we have the non-human tech, and we've been studying it and researching it for 70 years. Okay. And boom, big deal. All right. Yeah. Significant. That triggered something else, because it was on July the 14th, just 39 days after Grush came forward on June the 5th, and it had been in the works for a while, when Senator Schumer, who was he's not on the Intel committee, he was the Senate Majority Leader, one of the most powerful men in Congress, came forward and said, I, along with Mike Rounds and others, are sponsoring the next bill, and they announced it as the UAP Disclosure Act that had all of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. So he literally announces that on July the 14th. And the eminent domain clause in that bill confirmed Grush, because Grush says he has non-human tech and non-human bodies. The eminent domain, as he announced it, was to let it be known that the government has eminent domain, if this bill is passed, over that non-human tech and non-human bodies. All right. So if Grush is lying, there's no eminent domain. And so he basically confirmed Grush and sent a message to everybody else in the government, military intelligence complex, the Congress, the president, everybody else, that, yeah, I'm the Senate Majority Leader. I know there's ETs here. I know we have the tech. I'm part of the process now. And here's this major bill. He announces that on the 14th of July. It goes up on the website of the Senate on July the 17th of 2023. And then on July the 26th, we have that hearing in the House Subcommittee. And so now things are really rushing forward. All right. And so what happens in the end of 2023 is that the first real pushback against the disclosure process that was rapidly approaching disclosure itself, capital D disclosure, formal confirmation by the president. The first pushback comes, and they successfully strip the powers out of the bill late in 2023. So about half of that bill gets signed into law, where it still remains, and we move into 2024. And what happens in 2024, as I say, they resubmitted the bill. There's a lot more media, more witnesses start coming forward, right? Arrow becomes a big deal. There's a lot happening. It's exploding. And so ultimately, despite the pushback against the first UAP Disclosure Act, the truth embargo is collapsing. It's literally collapsing very quickly. Not done. The dam hasn't completely broken, but it is collapsing all through 2024. And as we go into 2025, here is where we are. The truth embargo was sufficiently toast that if the Congress had moved early, very late, say in 2023 or early in 2024, and had a third hearing, a major hearing, certainly in front of the Intel Committee, which is everybody has assumed was going to happen, we could have had disclosure under the Biden administration. But let's face it, 2024 was one of the most intense presidential final campaign years of all time. Everything was up in the air. Everything was at stake. It was literally a bar fight. It was brutal, and obviously it's not an easy time for people to say let's move forward with a hearing that will trigger the most important event in human history, bring in a new paradigm, unprecedented, and take our eye off the ball, which is where their eye is always at. How do we stay in power? How do we win? Blah, blah, blah. How can we raise another $1 billion? So they didn't do it. They kept pushing it forward until it was simply too late to do it. And so we did not get that hearing. But the press was still covering. The issue was still quite alive. There was plenty happening. And one of the reasons it was happening, as opposed to 1969 or 1955 or 1980 or during the Clinton administration, was that the internet, this unbelievable, massive thing, which we take for granted now, in which all 8 billion people are technically connected to each other worldwide. Then we've got broadcast news and everything now on the internet. You've got massive websites, and then of course you end up with the podcast revolution, which has exploded. And so the information on this subject is now just saturating the world. So that is happening. All right. Even though we're kind of stuck. Okay. And so that brings us to 2025. So the election is over. The Republicans are now fully in control of the government and with a very favorable Supreme Court. All right, fine. So then the question for every activist like me is that, all right, as of the beginning of 2025, where is disclosure? Well, I can tell you where it is. Right. All that happened in those previous 7 years, going back to December of 17, created the platform, educated the Congress, expand the awareness of the issue worldwide, set up legislation, established the platform for disclosure to take place. The only question was, who was going to be the president? And it turns out that the president that we got dramatically increased the likelihood, which was already high, that we would get confirmation of the extraterrestrial president. That's capital D disclosure, as I defined it back in 2001, roughly. And not only get it, but get it very quickly. So I think we're weeks away, could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it is in play. Now, I'm going to tell you why it could be this close, and then we could start hitting some questions. Here is why I am that bullish on disclosure very quickly. All right. First of all, after the election, after we know who the president is going to be and who's going to run the Congress as of January 3 and the president as of January 20, the House subcommittee, which will go down in history, of the Oversight Committee, led by Tim Burchett, and in no special order, Tim Burchett, Nancy Mace, Anna Paulina Luna, Eric Burleson, had already seized this issue. Somebody had to seize it. Could have been the House Intelligence Committee, too national security, maybe too skittish, or the Senate Intelligence Committee, no, or Armed Services, no. It was the House Subcommittee, who I guess you could say they had less to lose and much more to gain. And so they absolutely seized this issue. And by that, I mean, Burchett goes on several national news programs and says there's extraterrestrials here, flat out. I don't think any member of Congress while serving had ever done it. I don't think so. If it's brought to my attention, I'll tell you, but no, he did it several times. He then comes out and flat out says, anyway, we've got that ET tech. We got the tech, right? Non-human tech. So he's starting it. Then Mace is starting to speak up. And before you know it, they've put together that hearing, which took place on July the 26th of 2023. And then they just bit down even harder, right? And so they are the point of the spear in Congress now, headed towards disclosure, driving the process, right? And so that's point number one. Point number two, they held a second hearing after the election, right? Where they brought in 4 witnesses. They tried to get even stronger witnesses, but they got pretty strong witnesses. And this was even more powerful than the Grush hearing, because while Grush was a single individual with an extraordinary information that comes secondhand, but from firsthand sources, actually being involved in the UAP task force, very powerful. These were 4 witnesses from 4 different areas of background, covering a very broad experience. Luis Elizondo, Army Intel, DIA, and of course, in the middle of the whole disclosure process. A new person to the game is Admiral Gallaudet, who very distinguished gentleman, focusing on the unexplained submerged objects. Had a lot to say, very significant. Then you had Mike Gold, who has a significant background in a range of areas involving technology and NASA, and he was very matter of fact. And then you had Schellenberger, who was a journalist who had been able to come forward with a significant story that may prove to be very, very important, may not, but it generated a lot of press and involves a program that's essentially a SAP or a USAP called Immaculate Constellation. Let me be clear. We have no idea how many USAPs there are regarding this issue. Right? It could be 10, it could be 50, it could be 100. The total number of USAPs they've got overall, God knows. In terms of SAPs, meaning it's a special access program, but you can at least acknowledge it to someone with clearance. Again, 20, 50, 80, 100, we have no idea. And so over the years, a name will turn up here and a name will turn up there. You can't rule it out. They all have names. They really love to name these things. They're very fond of the names. They're very fond of having all this massive secrecy. I get it. And so that was that hearing. Very significant. Only 6 days later, Senator Gillibrand reasserts her involvement by bringing in Kozlowski to take an oath and testify in a hearing to her and Senator Joni Ernst, a Republican, to update them on the UAP. I mean, the Arrow. All right. Very significant. Only 20 people there, but it was an important hearing and briefing. And I actually talked to Gillibrand afterwards about one of the major things in play right now, which is the fact is the nuclear tampering shutdown witnesses are wanting to testify. They've wanted for 30 years. They're ready to come to Washington tomorrow, sit down, take an oath, and tell the entire world how our nukes were shut down on multiple occasions. All right. So that was all happening. All right. So that's what, November the 19th. All right. And then here is what has happened since that takes me to where I am. We learned that a number of people in President Trump's circle were favor taking action on this. Okay. We knew that President Trump had been asked about this issue as more than any other presidential candidate or president, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton. So he'd been asked many, many times, going all the way back to his first term, including by his son. And he gave answers that were not exactly definitive, but they didn't dismiss it. Clearly, he answered. So he has a public record. He's talked about it. He's mentioned it. But more importantly, it's being brought up to him. So we knew that. Okay.
Right.
And for me, the clincher was 3 days before the inauguration. I was sent a link. You know how many podcasts there are now? They estimate it could be as much as 7 million.
Yeah, it's big.
The number of podcasts in the UAP area could be in the 600 range. I have a file on about 300, and it's not complete. And so I get a link to a podcast. I'm going, okay, fine. And I bring it up. And what podcast is this? And remember, this is live, and I think it was live in an archive 3 days before the inauguration of the president. It is the podcast called, I think it's called Unlimited, but I'm not sure. I should know that.
Could you say that again?
I think it's called Unlimited, but it might be another name. And it's easy to find out. You could probably do it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Podcast of Donald Trump Jr., the president's son. And guess what? It has 1 million subscribers. Okay, at least 1 million, because he's the president's son. There's nothing shocking here. And as it turns out, Don Jr. is a pretty good podcaster. He's quite competent. And so, okay, great. Don has a podcast. Why do I care? Because his guests for an hour and a half were Louis Elizondo and Rod Coulthart, one of the top journalists that have been in the center of this thing for 7 years, and one of the lead witnesses and with direct involvement in the issue, who's written a book. There's a doc, and whatever, Louis Elizondo. And they're talking UFOs and disclosure for an hour and a half, 3 days before the inauguration. Is there any chance whatsoever that Don didn't mention that to his father, or that had no idea, or is there a good chance that his father actually encouraged him to do that? Okay, so look, all I can say is this: one, the platform has been prepared for the president to step forward with or without another hearing. It doesn't have to be in the Intel or the Senate anymore. Another major House subcommittee hearing will be more than enough. Or without that, he could simply call the press into the Oval Office and simply say, I've talked to my Secretary of State, my CIA director, my DNI director, and several other people that I have just appointed. They've asked around, and we have non-human technology and non-human presence engaging us, and what you've been hearing is true, and I am going to see to it that you learn all about it, right? And that is disclosure. Bam. And then finally, right, to make my point as strong as I can make it, and I may be wrong. You never know, because anything could happen, right?
Yeah.
A nuclear plant could blow up, and they have to evacuate Europe, or whatever the hell. Make the final point is that there have been 14 presidents since Roswell. And of those 14 presidents, the one president absolutely more capable of, more willing to simply do this is Donald Trump, by a substantial margin. All the other presidents, for whatever reason, had various concerns, various issues to deal with, national security and everything else, and all of them ultimately simply didn't go there. The two that tried to go there, Carter and Clinton, were stuffed like a basketball shot. Went up for a layup, and they just stuffed them, and then just backed off. Okay?
Well, didn't Podesta also push Hillary, like saying, let's go UAP now and push for disclosure releases?
Not exactly.
For her campaign against Trump.
But remember, I said of the 14 presidents.
Right, 14, gotcha.
Okay. Only 2 even tried. This president, right, is not like those 14. No, not at all. No. In other words, 16 generals in the armed services and 14 retired national security consultants and professionals could all send him a letter and say, Mr. President, we have heard that you might actually reveal that we're not alone. And we encourage you, please do not do that, because the American people can't handle that truth. And it really doesn't have a right to know, and so forth. And this is the one president of the 14 that would say, forget it, right? I think I'm going to do it, and I could give a damn about your opinion. I don't believe any of you. I don't trust you. And you should have done this yourselves, and just go out and do it. He is that person.
Yeah,
Whether you
he's
like him or don't
trademarking
like him.
himself that direction fully.
So he is absolutely capable of it. The platform is set. And so don't be shocked. The next thing you want to listen for or pay attention to is an announcement from Nancy Mace that she's set a date for the next hearing, which will be good. If she indicates that she is going to, as she stated, and I have sent in all of the witness statements to every single member, 3 versions of them, to every single member of the Oversight Subcommittee and every single member of the Senate Intel. I've actually talked to Nancy Mace, and I'm working directly with the leader of the nuke witnesses, and that's Bob Salas. If she says, and we're going to bring the nuke witnesses in, you should start laying in some champagne, right? Get some snacks, get the party room set up, okay? And watch for that. That would be a major indicator. But then, okay, and this is something I forgot to mention in terms of why I am so convinced, is that something happened just a short while ago that I didn't even see coming. The members of the House Oversight Subcommittee that have been driving this issue for years, that have held the 2 really robust hearings, came together with Comer, the chairman of the full Oversight Committee, and set up the Task Force on Declassifying Federal Secrets. A task force, because it is set up that way, has available the subpoena power attended to the Oversight Committee to subpoena anybody and documents. And they made it clear that they got a 6-month tenure because they don't want to spend too much money. And the first 4 things they're going after in this order are the remaining JFK files that have been withheld, the remaining RFK files, assassination files, which have been withheld, the withheld files from the assassination of Martin Luther King, and UAP, UFO matter, and all attended to it. And in that order. Now, some people say, oh, well, my God, when will they get to the UAPs? Look, getting those documents is not going to be difficult. It's going to be boom, bada bing, bada bam, right? The public absolutely wants them. They have made it clear they intend to get them. And they will actually subpoena people. They will bring them in. They will roast them if they don't. We're going to get those pretty quickly. And once they've got those, once they get those files, that task force is going to be the most popular task force in the history of task force in this country. And Mason and Burchett and Burleson and Luna are going to be hugely empowered so that when they finally say, okay, now let's resolve this UAP issue, they're going to have a juggernaut behind them. So that is why I'm saying what I'm saying. Happy to take your questions.
Well, I think you're spot on many things. It's hard to ask you a question when you deliver so well, but you do. In all honesty, I have been following things for a number of years myself. It's just been a passion. I try to speak to people with integrity and focus on the general informations of everything. While a lot of people stay focused on the stories of what happened, where it happened, and whether it was Randall Shum or, the theories behind Lazar, Area 51, things of that nature. A lot of people don't understand the curriculum of how the politics works within the system. So your breakdown was brilliant. Going further, I guess, into it, I feel the way you do when you look at who's podcasting what shows they go on that also represent the facts of what they talk about. And the president to be of the United States goes on that podcast and talks lightly about things that all also direct and coordinate a trademark of how he's going to proceed forward. And, restoring a lot of the things as we see it from a president and his actions now, I see us definitely moving forward. I agree with you, but I won't speculate on a time. I just think the time part with everything going on is hard. I also think, we should fit in a little bit of the 9/11 because I think we're going to see that, and that might possibly just fit in somewhere and explode before one of the other ors happen. Malcolm X might also be part of that disclosure. There's just so much. But I know that the key focuses are surrounding many things. I would hope that he, in some ways, gives protection and pardons to all people coming forth because of the deep cells that have been created around everything and do exist and still can harm people. So I think, with things like that happening, we may see some, narrations of possibilities there. What are your thoughts that way? Does Trump have to first protect the people before coming into a hearing?
No, he doesn't. First of all, there are witness protections that have been. There's been some witness protections elements within the 4 pieces of legislation that have been passed. Okay. Mm-hmm. There have been a few others that have been submitted into the House that didn't go anywhere. But I assure you, the Congress is primed to provide all the necessary protection for these witnesses. And let me make it clear. A witness is somebody who has information that is asked to come forward and talk about it, okay? Or someone who does come forward with information without violating any laws, but simply because they have that information and they're providing it. And the vast majority of people that are coming forward are witnesses. A whistleblower is something else entirely, and I can't repeat this enough, because being a witness can be awkward. It can expose you. Nobody wants to be a whistleblower. If you're thinking, I want to be a oh no, you do not want to be a whistleblower. A whistleblower is somebody who comes forward information, often on their own initiative, all right, or encouraged by others to do it in the interest of the general good, and they violate laws.
Yeah.
And more importantly, the information they provide has to do with illegal activities and actions, whatever the basis for that illegality going on within an organization, which would include the Navy and the Air Force and the Army or the CIA or the Pentagon or anything else, right? That is a whistleblower. And so essentially they're spilling the goods on an entity, and also people in that entity. It could cause them a lot of trouble. And because of that, sometimes they disappear.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they have death threats. They have to hire security. Sometimes they commit suicide. I mean, I'm talking now overall, over the whole genre. Nobody wants to be a whistleblower. And if you just call somebody who's a witness, like Bob Salas is not a whistleblower. He's a witness. He spent 2 hours talking to Arrow, told him everything about the shutdowns. Mm-hmm. And he asked them, are you going to talk to the Air Force? And they said, probably not, because they never listened to us, which was notable. And he's spoken about that. But he asked them, can I record this discussion? In which I'm telling, they said, yeah, you record it. He's got it. He asked them if there's any NDA conflict here. They said, no. He's not a whistleblower. He is a witness.
Right.
All right. And so when podcasters, well-meaning, or anyone else refer to people who are witnesses as whistleblowers, they're basically sending out a message. Why don't you threaten this guy's life? Why don't you swat him? Send a SWAT team over there. So I just keep saying this. If I could get on a really big show, I think I could maybe reach out to more people. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is this. One of the reasons people are struggling with assessing the finality of the truth embargo is that most people, particularly people that are very busy making lots and lots of money or legislating or civil, whatever, Air Force people, whatever. They got a big job. They're doing their thing. They haven't got time to hang out on the internet 20 hours a week. Most people have not yet come to understand the power of the podcast revolution. They just don't get it. They just don't understand it. And while I could go on and on about this, I'm going to give you one example, and it should be enough for people to get it. There are millions of podcasts. How many podcasts on the UAP ET disclosure issue? I don't know. I think it's approaching at least 1,000, because I have a database of 300 already, and I haven't even tried to amalgamate the rest. So I say there's 1,000. Okay, but whatever, podcasts. And some of these are not necessarily UAP podcasts, but people can turn up. All right. And so Kamala Harris was given an opportunity to do a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan, a man of his time, a man of his generation, who is extremely popular. He's very good at what he does. He spent years honing his skills. And she wanted it on her terms. You come to me, it's an hour. No. He basically told the vice president of the United States, who was running to be the president of the United States, it's got to be the way we want to do it. And if you can't do it, then, I'm sorry, we're not going to interview you. But the man who did interview was Donald Trump for 3 hours.
Right.
That interview, by the time of the election, that interview might have had somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 million views.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. I've seen that.
And again, anybody out there that doesn't get that, he's like, well, it's 100 million views. Most people probably just didn't pay attention, or they didn't care. Not only that, it's had 100 million, still up, right? Who knows? It'll be the people will go back and be watching that interview for years. Again, they don't get the podcast revolution. I do. That's why I do I almost never turn down a podcast. I would give anything. It would be fantastic to get on Joe Rogan's show. I actually did an interview with him way back when he wasn't the king of all media. And it was not a big deal, but it was when he had a show called Joe Rogan's Questions Everything. The point is that this issue is all over the podcast world. It's being broadcast and archived. Okay, broadcast and archived to be seen until, I don't know, the internet blows up. And so the internet and the podcast revolution, everything in it is just pressing up against the truth embargo like 1 billion tons. And so the idea that the truth embargo will survive it is ridiculous. Okay. And to make the point even further, I once got interviewed by CBS News back in 1971, and I was just so thrilled. And so I rushed back. I won't give you the full picture. I just rushed back to the apartment and sat down so I could watch my interview on CBS News. And it was about 2 minutes. And it came up late in the show. Walter Cronkite was the guy. So it had a huge audience. Okay, right? And millions of people watched the CBS News with Cronkite. So at the end, they did a little clip of me being interviewed by one of the CBS reporters. Fine. And then it was over. And then it was gone. Right? It wasn't republished. It wasn't put up on the internet. There was no internet. It wasn't put up on YouTube or social media. There was none of that. It was gone. It went into the archives of CBS News and has never been seen again. Now, not too long ago, I actually, because I think it was kind of a cool thing, I got in touch with CBS News to see if I could get that little 2-minute clip. And he said, yeah, it'll cost you $10,000.
Wow.
That was 1971. Not like that now, is it?
No.
Right. Back then, you could make a fool of yourself in some interview. It would get out, and then it would be archived. No big deal. You make a fool of yourself now, and your great-grandchildren will be watching that on some archive thing 30, 45 years later. So this is the nature of where we are. And again, that is why when I say the truth embargo is collapsing, I know with certainty that I'm correct about that.
Yeah, I understand. And what a mind-blowing price. And I remember Joe Rogan back in those days. He was on with Uncle Art one night, and he was all they talked about DMT and so many fascinating. He's just a realist of a guy with a great personality that seems to fit with so many other strong voices. I wish you the best. And if I can do anything, where this goes anywhere, because honestly, Alex Jones and a few people do know me. I mean, I'm not saying I'm big. I might get 20, 30, 40,000, 50,000 people on radio listening. I might get 3,000 here on Facebook, other social media platforms, a few here. But if one ear hears, you never know who that next ear will be.
Yeah, and I will add this. Look, one of the most important aspects of my work for 29 years was this. I made the decision early, and I've never violated it. This issue transcends politics. It transcends religion. And so I do not, and I've given over 1,500 years, I do not make partisan political statements. And I avoid partisan political platforms. Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan, I think, has made it pretty clear that he has views, but overall, he's certainly a bipartisan platform. He'll allow people from any view come on, give them a fair shake and so forth. And so, but the point is that kind of power. And by the way, I should mention that in that interview, Donald Trump brought up the UFO thing lightly, but he brought it up. Joe didn't ask him. That doesn't mean that Joe wouldn't have asked him, probably would, but he brought it up. He mentioned it. So he dropped it. He dropped it, either said UFO or UAP, he dropped that into an interview that was then going to be seen by 50, 60 million people before the election. So again, and lastly, when I talk about the personality of the president and the fact that he's a very, very independent in terms of what he chooses to do, let's be clear. And I know he's been told this. I've been talking about this for 30 years. I'm sure that others understand what I'm about to say, is that the first, not the second or the third, but the first head of state that breaks the glass, breaks the pane, crosses the goal line, and confirms to the citizens of their nation, and that means to the entire world, that in fact that phenomenon is not just real, it is non-human, it is from somewhere. We have craft, we have bodies, and that you're going to get that information. We're going to learn more. And that is the disclosure event, as I defined it, capital D, it's an event, proper noun, will achieve one of the greatest political legacies in history, period.
Yeah.
Right? And a massive injection of political capital. And so I guess everyone can decide whether that is something that would appeal to President Donald Trump or not. I have a feeling it would appeal to him quite a bit.
Yeah. I want to take you to a question, a simple question. I know you say that there are witnesses, I guess, of all types and sorts, but would this also, how do you reflect with people's personal experiences as witnesses? Are they included into that genre as well?
Oh, yeah. Any contactee that comes forward and talks about their experience is a witness to an ET contact. They're witnesses. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. And there have been several million, I think there have been millions of events. But we have over the last, when the contactee issue and that whole stuff really explodes on the scene in the 80s, early 80s. And it came out all the way back with the Betty Barney Hill case. But for decades after that, though, it just was submerged, but then it explodes, driven by a couple of key books, certainly Bud Hopkins, several, but it was Whitley Strieber that set the torch.
Yeah, so great people.
What's happened is that hundreds have been studied and interviewed or whatever and written up in various books, hundreds. But most people don't want to go public with that. Many don't even have a memory, but they are part of it, and they may get those memories. But the vast majority of people that have any memories, they do not want to come forward. They just carry it as a thing about their life that they can't really talk about. However, one thing they can do is just write down everything that they know that happened to them and send it to one of the leading authors or researchers, just so that somebody has a record. They told somebody, and they, with an understanding, and I'm sure this is kind of even a given, but they may mention it, that this is just for you. I'm sending you this so you know. Okay, you can refer to it in the anonymous sense, meaning I know these many people have said this, but no, don't mention my name. The number of those accounts are in the hundreds of thousands,
Right.
sitting in the files, and one day they might get reviewed. They'll certainly end up maybe at Rice University or with Marler or some of the other archives that are appropriately coming together. Another example of why the truth embargo is ending. Hundreds of thousands, all of them are witnesses, right? And I assure you that once disclosure takes place, the number of contactees who were not prepared to come forward publicly are going to come forward publicly, and it's going to be a big number. All right. Yeah. And the only reason why that witness testimony is not part of the fundamental, not part of the end game of getting the Congress and the president and all that stuff done. The only reason is not because we don't respect them, not because it's not important. It's that that's a lot more to digest. It's a little more to have to deal with, and highly implicative and complicated. And so it was the decision, obviously, of the activists and the people, which includes me, that this is not, we're not going to take that through the door in terms of the political disclosure activism. And some people don't even talk about it. Right? There are members of Congress that they'll walk out and say there's an ET presence, but they're not going to talk about abduction or anything else. I made the decision about 4 years in, because I wasn't that big deal. I mean, I wasn't like, that famous. I'm just an activist doing my thing. But I knew a lot of, I started, for my first engagement with this issue was hanging out at John Mack's operation in Cambridge with most of the staff were all contactees. I never met a contactee until then. And so after about 4 years in, I realized I could not do this and go and speak publicly and pretend that the contactees didn't exist. It was just not doable. And so I said, I'm going to talk about that. So I've got one face forward to the Congress and the media with respect to the need to end the truth embargo, and I have another face forward to the general public. And in that area, I'm happy to talk about contactees, and I'm confident that after disclosure, they will be a big deal, and they will have their day. And I wish it hadn't taken so long.
Right. I would agree. And maybe then some of the authors will flourish because skepticism will go away because, people did their work to bring, disclosure forward. And, because a lot of people who do a lot of work, and I got 10 books behind me, don't get any credibility. And I just talked to Brad Olson the other day. He publishes and does a lot of different things and whatnot, but a fantastic friend to me. And I called him, I sent him a text message and we were just, having a few words here and there. And when I see the work that they have to put in just to survive, and John Mack, I mean, really, what happened there? I mean, I'm just skeptical.
No, don't be skeptical. I know all about that. I went
really?
To that exact.
Would you share a little bit, Ben? Because I'm still a little lost on some of it.
I went to the exact intersection where it happened.
Okay.
Studied it carefully. I know about the meeting that he had that night. And it was quite clear what happened without question. Plus there were reports and news coverage and everything else. And I tell you, it would have been so easy to step off that curb and get hit by that truck based upon that entire scene. So I'm absolutely certain it was an accident. And let me tell you this. I'm only 1 second from not being here right now because I had a stint back in my regular working days when I spent about a year, 14, 15 months in the Cayman Islands and doing a job. Okay. And it's the first time I'd ever been in any country that drove on the left. And I'm going, and with the steering wheel on the right of the car and you're driving on the left. Okay. It's the reverse. Everybody knows about that. And so, but I said, okay, I'll adjust. And once you get doing it, it's okay. Okay. So fine. So I think it was like the first week I was there. I went and met somebody at one of the resorts for a drink to talk about some things that are going on. and that resort's on the beach with a huge like dirt parking lot in front of it that right on the main road that runs, the only main road that runs the entire length of the island, right? So that's it. Speed limit's about 50 miles an hour, 45. And so I got in the car and I started to pull out. And literally instantly, as I'm moving forward, a truck, panel truck, not some pickup truck, a panel truck about 45 miles an hour goes in front of me. And I'm thinking it was that close to my bumper. All right. And so I then go over, make my turn. I'm on the left side of the road heading down towards the capital of the Cayman Islands, the main city. And I started doing the math. And I realized if I leave 1 second sooner, that truck hits the driver's side of that car at 45 miles an hour and doesn't even brake, and it would have killed me instantly. And so I'm going, yeah, that was not good, Steve. You almost killed yourself. That would have been kind of stupid. So I know what happened to John Mack, and believe me, his family is not happy with anyone who is talking about the fact that, well, he was, murdered or this or that kind of stuff. Oh, they hate it. And that's, that's their prerogative. But the fact is, it was an accident. And so I'm happy to tell anybody that, so that is dismissed.
Well, thank you for sharing your research and the things that you discovered to back that up, because back in the day, there was so much speculation on it because we were going through a different part in a different era, paradigm of life and so forth. But a fantastic individual offered us so much. And these are, some of the that we mentioned today and that you mentioned more than I, some of the heroes of the past. That's why I love Paula Harris so much too, connecting the dots, her works and her books and Trinity and more and things like that, talking to the old hero spectrum that I was able to become pen pals with a few of them, no more than that. But to get a response was just like, a young guy. I was like 20-some, 30 years old. Now I'm in my higher 60s. And it's like, it was fantastic. Oh, these guys actually do respond and they teach. And then you listen, you follow. And It kept me in this whole thing for the past, oh my God, 50 years nearly. And maybe a little less, but it's probably around there. The passion, the fascination. And I think with that also is why I've engaged in certain things and experiences myself. And when the sad part is with me, myself, talking about things on a podcast, sharing other people's experiences as well as my own, and never once move people like MUFON or anybody reaching out, even when you have a guest from MUFON on and just takes your story as a story and doesn't even accept the context of it to put it in documentation of record.
Well, let me help you there. First of all,
okay, sir. Thank you.
So many stories, so little time. And for most of these last 78 years, there was not an activist movement. There wasn't really anything that you could call an activist movement until the early 1990s. And even then, it didn't really start to emerge until almost the year 2000. So most of the previous era, it wasn't a political movement. It was a, quote, citizen science prove movement. In other words, it was like piling up cases and studies and everything else to show it's real. And everybody felt if we do enough studies and enough this and enough that, write enough books, the government will go, oh, well, you proved it. So, yeah, it's true. And the government could give a damn. I mean, you could spend $10 billion trying to prove it, and the government will say there's nothing there. And so it's like at some point, another 100 or 1,000 witness cases it doesn't make much of a difference. And so and it's so much already. And so at some point, it just maxed out. In other words, we don't need any more sighting reports. But the internet allows you to do them, and that's fine. And so they'll pop up. I saw this. I saw that. We don't need it. We know they're there. They're seen all the time. There've been thousands upon maybe hundreds of thousands of sightings. We don't need it anymore. So another one, that's fine. But I'm not, Steve, you want to come and look at this place where I saw? No, I know the ETs are here, right? Once we get past disclosure, that's a different ballgame. Now, every contactee is legitimized immediately. Every legitimate contactee is legitimized. And so, yeah, guess who is going to start getting a lot of attention? So you've got a world of 8 billion people, and it's just been told, yeah, we have visitors, been here for quite a while, got bases, fly around, they take people, what have you. Yeah, big deal. And most of these people are going, wow. And now they want to know more. Now, they could write the Defense Department and say, look, could you give me a little advanced material there ahead of the program? No. So where could you learn something really interesting firsthand about this ET presence that's just been confirmed? Well, you go talk to a contactee. They've seen him. They've actually communicated with him in many cases. They've been on the ship. And so post-disclosure, if you're a contactee, you may not want to put your address out or your phone number right away. You may want to see how things are going, because people are going to be wanting to talk to you. Everybody that suspected you're a contactee is going to call you. They're going to email you. You're going to get invited to parties at places you didn't even know you know the people. They're going to have their day, and that's great. So at that point, everyone that has a story, you have some, let it be known, because at that point you will get attention. If MUFON didn't call, it's because MUFON has already looked at tens of thousands of cases, and one more just doesn't make a difference. So don't feel bad about it, but have your story ready. Now, the second point I want to give you, a piece of advice, is this, and this goes to everybody in the world of UAP, who all are my colleagues as far as I'm concerned. If you have written a book, any book, or multiple books, whether they're out of print or not, most of them are out of print, you need to start now getting in touch either with the original publisher, or if you have now got the rights, if they've reverted to you, a publisher, or start investigating the whole deal on Amazon where you sell your own books, and get ready, because everybody that's got a book in this issue needs to get it back out post-disclosure. Yeah. You're going to have 8 billion people trying to learn what they can about this. And if your book is available, they're going to buy it, or they're going to do the audio or whatever, the Kindle. I can't even imagine how many books on this subject will be purchased in the first couple of years post-disclosure. Let's put it in the billion range. And so I'm just giving my friends a little heads up, right? It's getting close. Get ready. If you've got 5 books, you want to already start exploring, how can I get those books back out and purchasable as soon as possible once confirmation comes. I don't have a book because I can't sit still long enough to write one. It's okay. I'm going to be doing international speaking tours. I've done them before, but this time they'll be even better. And so I'll be fine. But I'm not going to be leaving a legacy of books behind. Just a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I'm going to leave my children a lot, not a lot, neatly done, so they can make up their mind with the box, hand it over the way Stanton Freeman did.
Oh, that's the files, yeah.
Or yeah, that's another objective of what I have. Yes, that are like ready. I mean, to me, my last thing that I'm working on, to be honest with you, is Behind the Cell Doors of a Prison Planet, and. Again, is it political? Is it non-political? Yeah, in many ways. The spectrum's all over the place, but it will be interesting to the eye and to the mind. But again, what we have is, and what our capabilities are as far as we take them. I look at things that way. I do want to bring something up to you. I do intend to, and we could talk about this, another time, but I do have a way to knock on the door to possibly help you. I'm not telling you I'm great at what I do to do this, but I think I have a good enough friendship with a couple people and Billy Carson, and to step into the door of possibly you interviewing on larger scales of shows, because you do deserve it, especially with all the work you've done through your life and where your what your analogies are, how you guided us today. Maybe some people don't even understand, and they probably don't even know the names that you brought up, because again, they're still looking at what Travis Walton talked about all these years ago.
Sure.
Yeah. This is exactly where the diaper community exists in a certain way. And please don't take that as a insult on anybody. But there's the newbies now that are just taking the information and reanalyzing it and creating their own contents of it. So, that's why I speak real clear on the heroes. And you're right within that genre of the goodness of everybody fighting the good fight, as Richard Dolan always says.
Look, feel free to knock on a door, but let me know the door ahead of time.
Okay? I would do that. Important. Yeah, okay? Sure.
And then what was the other thing I was going to say? I was going to say, no, I had it right to my tongue. So your research files that you've been doing all these years to write your books, are we talking a substantial cache of research?
Give me 1 second.
All right.
Half of them are falling out of my hands, and this is only just a little bit.
Okay, so how many?
Yeah.
You know those standard boxes, file boxes, right? They're about so big, and so how many of those do you think your work would fill up?
3, just 3.
Okay. All right.
But they're detailed, specific. They're PowerPoints. There's the information. There's the everything from where it happened, when it happened, who it happened to, mass sightings, what countries. I mean, it's a genre of everything that is maybe now not as important as because of where we are and what testimonials can do for us in Washington.
Okay. Look, you put a lot of work in it. Don't hesitate to get in touch with Jeffrey Kripal at Rice University and the Impossible Files. They might be willing to take those as part of the growing archive that they're doing, or David Marler, who's also developing a substantial archive. Obviously, it's not a university, though it'll probably end up at one day, and just lay the groundwork in case the time comes for those files to go somewhere. Because if you don't, they'll end up in a landfill.
Yes.
But fortunately, the stigma's gone. So you're going to see a lot of thank God the research, though a lot is lost. A huge amount of research is going to be fully archived at multiple locations. And as, of course, the issue is becoming real, the universities are starting to realize that, we kind of failed the American people here by totally crawling under a rock for 70 years on this issue and not engaging it at all, with a couple of very light exceptions, vanity couple courses. One of the greatest intellectual failures of all time. I mean, really. Makes the Catholic Church denial of the sun-centered universe look like nothing compared to what the academic failure on this issue. So one way they can help make up is to do everything they can to provide archival displays and archival arrangements with the hundreds, if not thousands, of researchers that have been on this, to make as much of that possible, archived as possible for future generations. That would be a way to atone for their failure. So I think that any researcher out there should not rule out at all their stuff ending up at a good place where people 100 years from now will be able to go and say, wow, this is some of the things you did during that amazing time when the entire planet actually found out formally that they weren't alone in the universe. Kind of a big deal.
Well, I'm like you. I know it's true. We just need to, and many others need to, just hold on to that seatbelt, whatever you need to lock down with. And as you said, I think earlier, get out the popcorn, whatever, get a cigar, bourbon. Spectacular things are going to happen. We have the right leadership. We have the right direction. The right components are already in place working. They're not all the way there, but they're coming. It's people like you who are pushing for this to happen in bigger ways. You're in the know with great people, and I'm going to do anything that I can. And I'll whisper into a few ears and say, and I'll get back to you the best I can with all respect. And I appreciate everything you've done for me today. I look at you as a legend and a hero in the community. I truly do.
Well, legend is a nice term, but every time you hear it, the message is clear. You're old.
Yeah.
It's like saying, and you're a really old guy. No, I get it. That's okay. I appreciate it. Look, here's 2 more things, and then I got to go. One,
Okay.
My plan is I'll probably be in Washington, and I'll probably be in my office. But there is I do have access to some fantastic facilities there. And so what I'll probably do is I'll quickly reserve, it costs me nothing, a very significant conference room. They have the top equipment. And I'll invite a lot of people to come, right? Bring your potluck, bring food, bring drink, whatever the hell, come. We're going to all get together to celebrate, right? And then I will set up a Zoom call. I have a Zoom, and I'll try to, I think I can get up to like 500 people. I'll set up maybe more. Maybe I'll go to the Ultra Pro and just set up a Zoom and on the big screen in that conference room for everybody to be able to communicate with each other, and we could talk to them and so forth. And it'll be like a local and a celebration. And I think I could probably put that together within 72 hours of disclosure, I think, easily. And so we can all kind of celebrate. So that's my plan.
Sounds wonderful.
If I'm not in DC, whatever. And the other thing that I'm about to launch is the Paradigm Research Group was a sole proprietorship for 28 years. About 7 months ago, I finally went nonprofit. Maybe I should have done it sooner, but that's water under the bridge. So I'm now a 501c nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. And for the first time in 28 years, people can donate tax-deductible contributions. I have a donate module on the site, though it needs to be tweaked. I got a problem, but I'm talking to them. But or direct to the it's very easy to direct fund PRG. And so I'm hoping to raise funds because I want to hold the 7th X Conference 2025. I know exactly how to do it. I've done plenty of these, and it would be a pretty substantial conference, and it would be at the National Press Club with the Washington Plaza Hotel attended. So, and that would be probably the first project that I would do if any significant funding comes in. About 25,000, and I can take off like that. The other thing I'm going to be doing is this. Going back to the early aughts, I've done 4 foreign speaking tours, 3 of Europe and 1 in Australia. I've spoken to 20 countries, at least. Brazil several times, Mexico, 8 or 9, 10 times in Canada, 13 cities in Australia, UK, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Russia. So I've done that. It was years ago. All right. And in every case, all of these speaking engagements were set up by supporters, individuals in a city that, they knew about a venue that was solid. They knew how to get it set up, promote it, and everything else. And then I just came in and spoke. Right. Most of them were ticketed, some weren't. But this time around, it'll definitely be ticketed so that those people, my supporters, will make some money, and PRG can make some money so we can engage the post-disclosure world, which is what all this is about. So I'm going to soon put that out. I've got a substantial following in the range of 30,000 around the world, most of the U.S. But I'm also going to do it for the U.S. In other words, if there's a supporter in a city that knows about a very good venue and has the ability to promote old Stevie Boy coming in to give them a nice lecture about what the hell's going on here and so forth, leading up to disclosure. And of course, after disclosure, they should get in touch and we can work out some arrangements and make it happen. Because I didn't write any books. I studied physics, 1 book, a course, because I got ADHD. Let me tell you, I got it. I didn't know how bad until I got older. And so Richard's written a bunch of books. You've written a bunch of books. I have not written a single book. Could I do it? Yeah. Would it be incredibly painful? Yeah. But what I do is I speak. I'm a communicator. I talk. Yeah. So I may not leave a legacy of books, but I have done more lectures, more interviews. I mean, together, lectures and interviews on this subject than any person ever. It's just how it worked out. And so I am ready to go out and start speaking to everybody, anybody, and make contacts and so forth, both in the U.S. and internationally. Certainly post-disclosure, but leading up to disclosure, sure, because that's my skill set. That's what I do. I can do. I've done PowerPoints with 200 slides. I don't do that so much, but I probably could generate some decent PowerPoints, add that into it. So this is something I'm letting podcasters know that, any supporter in a city that thinks they can put it together, we can work out a proper arrangement. It looks good. I'm there. So I'll leave you with that,
Okay.
Michael. And thank you so much. You are part of the podcast army. We are getting disclosure one podcast at a time, and that podcast of Donald Trump may be one of the big podcasts that gets us to disclosure. And so you're part of something pretty damn special, and I am always available anytime, even short notice, because somebody comes down with COVID or something, can't go on. You call me. The chances are 90%. Oh,
Okay.
5 minutes? Yeah, I can get set up.
Yeah, I hear you. And I thank you for acknowledging the fact that you'll know I'm out there a little bit now. And I am a fighter, a warrior for the children and for, the good and for the good of technology, it's part of what everything that I do, that I somehow see it fitting. Like you, I didn't know what I could be, to be honest with you, but all I know is where I stood in all this, not how I got anywhere from it. To me, that's my focal of who I am as a human being. Whatever happens is like, hey, Sarah, Sarah. But I do thank you so much, Steve, for today. I'll
leave you with 2 questions. I know the answers, but I'll ask them anyway.
Okay.
Is your passion for this issue very much directly connected to wanting to make this situation in our planet right now a lot better than it is now?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay. And are you committed to doing what you can do as authentically as possible?
Well, I have over 2,000 videos and double the hours. So that says a lot for who I am as a human being, what I've done, what my accomplishments have been, where I've been ripped from, where I can't get back onto. But again, that's the best way I can answer it. It's in my work. And anybody that chooses to look for me will find me somewhere. Maybe 100 years from now. But the point is, we'll be recognized for the troopers and warriors that we were behind all these things.
I know so many people in this field that the answer to those questions are pretty basic. Yeah. This is not just about proving ETs are here. We already know that. It's about something major that could help lead us towards getting this world in a better place, because it's a mess. We pushed it to the limit. And yes. 2, if you're going to do that, you've got to be authentic about it. You've got to be as authentic as possible. And when you get in that zone, you're in a place where retiring, out of the question. You stick with that and you continue to do it until the very last day, right? And I have many colleagues that I can say that about for sure, to the very last day. They weren't retired sitting on a beach somewhere drinking a Mai Tai. They were continuing to press this issue. So you're a part of that group now, Michael. And I enjoyed my time. So until next time, my friend, Ad Astra.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Right. Bye.
Be blessed. Stay well. All right, everybody. That was my guest, Stephen Bassett. What a phenomenal person. I'm going to do a little quick reading here for anybody at the end here. We were a little bit late getting on, and I can't see where we're all, but that's okay. That's not why I didn't do it. We're going to put a clip into there. But so if you're just, following this to the end, or you do follow it to the end, Stephen Bassett has spoken to audiences, as he said, in 20 countries about some of the most political implications of UAP/ET, the phenomena of and disclosure. The formal confirmation by heads of states and extraterrestrial presence engaging in the human race. And that's really what we're all talking about anyway. So, talk about hitting the nail, boom, with that hammer right in the center. He is also a co-founder of Hollywood Alliance and the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, which is now 501c3, which he has mentioned, a nonprofit providing educational consulting, analyst, and political activism for the post-disclosure world. His advocacy work has also well been covered by national and international media, including CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. I know some of these are not, but listen, he's been there. He's been in Washington Post, New York Times. Bassett has done over 1,500 media interviews. I get that. Mind blowing. I know what that's like. the time that it takes to do it, to be there in support of humanity and seeing so much through. But many of these interviews and presentations is also in appearances or in documentary films, as well as represented, and you can find them on YouTube. In 2013, the PRG organization conducted a citizens hearing disclosure at the National Press Club, as he spoke about in Washington. In November of 2024, the PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. We covered all that today. And again, I didn't have a lot of questions to be asked because I wanted his information to be the most important part of the podcast. Bringing the most out of people. And he did for me on my side by getting my attention with a few things that I was unaware of. In December of 2023, Steve also co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in Los Angeles, a new media-centric organization aiming to align those working within the UAP/ET research arena and writers and directors and producers working across every facet of the global entertainment industry. I mean, you've probably seen him on Ancient Alien, to be honest with you. I mean, he's such a fascinating person. PRG is presently working to help bring about more comprehensive congressional hearings in the U.S. House and Senate for a growing list of UAP witnesses. This includes activist project titled Shiftstorm. Incredible words. Nicely put. Sometimes I really bring up a lot, but the focus on our time was a presentation that he was proud to give to us, that he does in other countries and so forth, and his direction for what he's doing right now. And I thought that would be very important because so many of us, if you want to go see anybody who's doing a presentation, it takes the time to get there. It takes the money to get there, the effort to get there, to buy the tickets to get there and so forth. So what a blessing to have him on today to do this. I also want to give a big shout out to everybody that was in today. I was trying to stay focused on the conversation, understanding it clearly. I hope you did also. I have some shows coming up where I am going to be talking about case files, specific things that you probably know about, and we'll tie some of that together on what's in the skies upcoming very soon. But I want to say hello to River Rose. Always good for me here, River, and I know you're talking to others. Chuck Cook, hey, brother, how are you? Joe Fox, love you, man. You're everywhere, Joe. You really are. Not a lot in the group room chat today. I'm surprised with such a big name as part of the show. Randall Rose, hey, a partner in crime of mine. Ronald Farrell Jr., happy to have you in. Jerry Michaels showed up today. Hey, American Rebellion, forced to be reckoned with. Oh, he likes getting angry at the others. It's the left. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. You'll enjoy it. Look them up. American Rebellion. Gary Gerhardt, good day to you also. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, stepping in today. I hope you will like and share to your platforms and your groups and so forth. This was basically covering UFOs, UAPs, ETs, abductions, a bunch of things. Thanks, everybody, for being here. My time is up for today. I will see you on the next show of What's in the Skies. America in Crisis, America Disclosing Uncensored. I'm sorry, I hide behind a man. I'm a man of hiding behind a lot of words. It's because I don't want to be taken off the air, and that's been the fight the last 4 years. I'm going to try to consolidate it back to where it was once good and what one name represents all four. But anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you. As I said, please like and share. Have a great day.